Good afternoon. Welcome back to Progressive Soup. My name is David Stevenson. In between our two shows, which we have our guests Henry Pietras and Joe Niola. In between shows, we were talking about a couple of things. One was the issue of guns in Connecticut, because we had an incident here in Connecticut in 2012 where 26 students and teachers were killed in the span of less than 3 minutes by a kid who had an axe to grind and unfortunately a lot of firepower at his disposal when he broke into the school. But Connecticut responded, whereas on a federal level, some of the states responded, but on a federal level there was literally no response. What Connecticut did was put some gun measures into place, some measures to limit the number of high-powered weapons, and to make sure those that are out there are registered. And between 2012 and then 2014, gun homicides in our state went in half, basically. They were half in 2014 of what they had been in 2012. So I think that speaks to some benefit from that legislation that we put into place. But what does that have to do with Bernie Sanders? Well, gentlemen, what does that have to do with Bernie Sanders? He seems to have a different take on guns and the ability to talk to each side of the issue on guns.
I think he can, because he has an understanding of the place that guns have in the society. You take a gun, you put it on the table here, it's really not going to do anything. It only has the potential of doing something when a hand reaches over to pick it up. So in a rural situation where hunting, target shooting is sort of part of the culture, it's kind of hard to outlaw a gun, which is understood as a tool as well as a weapon. Now, there's some of these high-powered guns that are strictly military, for military purposes. They don't really belong in either a rural or in an urban environment. Now, Bernie Sanders seems to have an intelligent approach to the whole gun issue. He realizes that there's a certain number of and a certain type of gun that should be available to people living in a rural situation, and he also realizes that guns in the urban situation should be limited. And because he's capable of seeing the total picture, I think he's going to be able to be very effective kind of across the board, especially because there are certain members of the Republican Party, and they're only members of the Republican Party because of this one issue. They're one-issue people. They don't want to lose their guns. And with the NRA reinforcing that kind of mentality, you need somebody like Bernie Sanders who can take the spin off the entire issue, make it clear to the people what the significance of a gun is in the society. And essentially, I think that's pretty much what he's talking about. And also, he recognizes the need to look at things like mental health. All right? Not only is it important to have strict gun control with respect to certain types of weaponry that really don't belong in the society, but the importance of the health of the country. Funds have to go into mental health. People have to be helped. We have to be aware of those people that require that kind of help, and which members of our society have to be restricted from having weapons because they may not have the facility, the psychological facility to handle that kind of a responsibility.
People generally reach out. There's a cry for help generally before anybody does any kind of heinous crime like took place in Newtown. It's the parents. The parents should have been aware of Adam Lanza's mental state. They were, and yet his mom bought him weaponry, kept weaponry in the house, and it probably wasn't a very smart idea on her part.
But even in the case, there's a war hero. I think they may have made a movie out of him. I think it might have been the character in American Sniper. He might have been he was felt that he could help another veteran from the. I'm not sure it was the Iraqi War or if it was the Vietnam War, but he felt that they could work together on the gun range. And he was killed. And I think he was killed because the entire culture right now is not aware of the amount of damage that an individual receives in the military. A human being has to be desensitized. That's a form of damage. Desensitized in order to kill another human being. And then when an individual is found in the context of doing so, and actually takes the life of other human beings, there's a very severe amount of damage that's done to that individual's psyche, and that damage is not repaired. That individual then is left to function in society. And I think you and I were talking about how some of those people that have been so injured find themselves in law enforcement. I think,
well, it's a different attitude. Like we were saying, if you're in war, it's us against me against them or him. Whereas when you're in the community policing environment, it's us working together. And I think it's very difficult for someone to change that attitude, especially if you've gotten training to desensitize the other side.
Yeah, and I believe that we also mentioned that the police force was becoming militarized because of the amount of surplus military material that was being funneled from the military into police forces.
Yeah, well, you saw that in Ferguson, where they had all these military vehicles, pointing at people. And I went very, very ballistic to see that kind of stuff happening here in this country.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. And then there's this whole movement now going on. Do Black Lives matter? Yeah. Well, of course they matter. There's no doubt about that. It's just that white people don't realize that those lives, they do matter.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, there's been a weird kind of killing that's going on between white police enforcement officers and black citizens.
Well, a related idea I'd like to point out is that we have this, as a country, I think we have this attitude that to go to the solution of last resort very, very quickly. No dialogue, no dialogue, no possibilities that maybe the other guy you're facing is somehow impaired, not able to process. Maybe you're giving instructions they can't process. Maybe they can't understand you. Maybe they can't hear you. There's all kinds of possibilities, but yet that, the decision that we see over and over on TV is to kill. Okay? And in some cases, in less than 30 seconds.
Right, it's the last resort becoming the first resort. It doesn't, And this whole idea of all lives mattering. We do know that all lives matter. However, the purpose of the Black Lives Matter is simply to remind us that black lives
matter also.
They matter also. Apparently what's escaping a certain segment of the society, all right, is that black lives, all right, are part of the equation. Yeah. And I think that's the point that they're trying to bring out.
Well, Henry you mentioned off camera about, in between shows, about police and their role within the community. and the notion that they should be walking, they should be on bicycles, they should be out there face to face with the community rather than in patrol cars, because that patrol car tends to create this this wall, this barrier between the police officers and the community. They need to be out there having good, positive contact with the people that they're there to serve and protect.
In New York City, when you see policemen on horses, everybody walks up and they're friendly and stuff, right? If you're on a bicycle, they're talking to people. Plus, being on a bicycle is a good fitness program.
And they're part of the community. They're out there. People can relate better to police officers.
I know that we're a very spread out community, so cars are essential as well. But in those cases where it's possible to talk to people and gather intelligence, which you wouldn't otherwise get, why not?
Absolutely.
Sure. Hi, I'm so and so. All right, my precinct is right here. You know, this is my beat.
Actually, one of the things that my children experienced was a program called DARE. Okay, and I thought it was very positive, excellent. The officer that came to my children's school was outstanding. And then for some reason, because of budgetary reasons, they eliminated it. But in reality, you know, you're investing today for your future. And I think it's very short-sighted to say, well, we don't have enough money. I think as a community we should come together. And
that was an extremely helpful and extremely important program that that really fostered good relationships between kids and the police department.
So we have short thinking versus long-term thinking, and unfortunately the long-term has gone by the wayside because of budgetary.
It's hard to measure something short-term, the effectiveness of something short-term, unless it's been in place. But intuitively, I think you could see that that was a very important program and very beneficial to the community, and the kids and the police officers, to get to know one another.
There are a lot of important programs, a lot of important issues, and a lot of them, of course, are being stressed by Bernie Sanders. But unless Bernie Sanders finds himself in an elected position, nothing is really going to change. And if things don't change, they're going to get worse. So
he has a highly effective position in the Senate, particularly in terms of veterans affairs. So he obviously would have much more of an effect as the President of the United States than he does in the Senate or that he did in the House of Representatives.
Well, the reality, David, is that Bernie, as he says, he can't do it himself. Okay, so we need to look at what happened to President Obama, for instance. He basically got no cooperation from the other side. Okay? And as a consequence, he relied on executive action. The president, his job is to set direction as to where we're going. It's Congress's job to provide the funding. And unfortunately, Congress hasn't done its job in that way. And, you know, if anything, this trickle down has ended up being trickle up. And since 2001, programs that needed money have been cut. And personally, I don't want 1 cent of my taxes to be wasted, but if it means paying more taxes and bettering the common good, I'm for it.
I think most people are.
I think most people are too, even the wealthy. And
this is where my tax money is going, and I feel good about that. I have to pay it, and now I can see what it's doing.
Absolutely.
Certainly. But you were going to say something about the registration situation now that we have in Connecticut and the importance of that, because unless people register, they can't vote. Isn't that correct?
Well, register as Democrats.
Of course.
You need to give Bernie the nomination. So unless that happens, what we're talking about is moot. So if you care about the issues and you're not familiar with the issues, look at feeltheburn.org. Every issue that you may be interested in is there at 3 different levels: high level, mid level, and all the way down to the nuts and bolts. But Bernie is one of the few people that I know of who walks the talk.
Henry, I believe you did mention that you were part of the Occupy Wall Street movement as well.
I wouldn't call myself that. What we did is my children and I went one day on a Sunday and we had a wonderful discussion with the people who were there. It was eye-opening, and I think everyone that we met there, cared about the future of this country. Maybe they weren't as organized as expected, but it was an inkling of what needs to happen. It was a beginning of what needs to happen.
I'm just hoping that people involved in that movement will see how their agenda could be fulfilled through a Bernie Sanders presidency. I think that's the direction. If we can get those people to support Bernie, if we can get young people struggling in school because of the cost of education, if we can get people like that to realize the importance of registering, all right, people that may feel it's time for them to move to the Republican Party, transfer.
Away from Republicans.
Away from the Republicans, and because you can't. All right, Bernie Sanders, his biggest hurdle now, his biggest hurdle is winning a primary.
That might in fact be the only hurdle, because polls have consistently shown that Bernie Sanders does better in a general election matchup against each one of the potential Republican candidates than Hillary Clinton does.
Hillary has name recognition. There's a lot of people out there that...
Which is good, and which can be good and it can be bad.
Well, in her case, I would say it's more advantageous because of the fact that many people are not really politically savvy enough to know who to vote for, and the response will be, oh, I've heard of her. I'm going to vote for her because I've heard of her.
Well, that's quite often what people do when they go in the voting booth.
But I think as citizens we need to do the next step, which is get educated as to what each candidate stands for. I think, and I'm speaking directly to the audience, please invest the time to learn the issues and learn what each candidate stands for. Also look at where the money's coming from, and also look at their advisors. Who are the advisors providing the knowledge or the platform for these candidates.
And I think that once they do, they're going to realize that the best possible candidate for the American people, the best president that we could have, is this old man. Old man by the name of Bernie Sanders.
And he is a critical thinker, and he looks at process, he knows where the breakdowns are, and he's truly trying to address it. But again, he's not the only. Even if he's elected, he can't do anything by himself. We, as citizens, have to step in and help.
He's made that clear. He's not Barack Obama. When Barack Obama assumed the presidency, his attitude was, "Thank you. I'll take it from here. I can negotiate with my fellow Republicans." They were not interested in negotiating with him, nor were the Democrats. And supposedly, I would say that they may have already been beholden to some big money that has sponsored their campaigns. So Bernie is going to go, if Bernie makes it to the White House, he's going to expect his contingency of American people to be there, demonstrating, calling their congressmen, and putting pressure on the Congress to enact the policies that he feels the American people elected him for.
Yep, and signing Bernie's petitions, which can be found on berniesanders.com. He has a whole bunch of petitions dealing with many different issues, and you can sign in and register so that he knows how people feel about it.
And it's also a good way of learning his positions on the issues, and he's been very consistent on everything for nearly 4 decades, nearly 40 years. He's been in public office, and his positions have been very consistent. There's no waffling. There's no focus group driven changes in his position.
Yeah, actually, in the not this one, but in the previous release of the funding numbers, Hillary had roughly $1 million, $900,000 worth of work done in polling, and Bernie had zero.
Yeah.
Because I feel like he knows. It's built into him. He knows what the issues are.
He doesn't need to find out what he should say because he says what he knows.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is definitely a plus. A critical thinker, right, who knows what the needs of the American people are.
And also he's aware of what the best practices are, not just here, but in all over the world.
Right. Right, and his ability to be to lead domestically and to lead in foreign policies are definitely there. They're superior. You can look at his record, look at his voting record.
Now, there may be some holes in his platform, but I believe that because he's a critical thinker, he can hire the appropriate advisors who can help him through areas that he's not knowledgeable on. Unlike Jeb Bush, who basically dismissed the Pope's encyclical on climate change because he didn't think that the Pope's job was to provide spiritual advice, not scientific advice, though the Pope was a scientist. And many of our top scientists in this country, including Mrs. McCarthy, who provided feedback on his encyclical.
Well, the Pope was also a Jesuit, and the Jesuits are considered to be, the intelligentsia among the Roman Church.
Yeah.
So the Pope is no slouch.
Well, just to finish my idea, what I was trying to say is, because Jeb dismissed climate change, then my question is, he said he didn't believe it, then I ask, where does he go for advice on climate change? Or if he gets sick, where does he go for advice for medical issues? Does he go to experts or does he go to some other unknown source? And I would guess that if you're a critical thinker, you would go to the people who know.
Well, this climate change issue there was a situation in one of the debates where Bernie Sanders was asked what is the most serious problem, and he said, well, it's climate change. Now, I recently learned that there was a drought in Syria. Because of the drought in Syria, a number of the agrarian or rural portions of the state were moving into the urban areas. At the same time, a lot of the Iraqis, were also moving out of Iraq.
A lot of displaced people.
There's a lot of displaced, and they were moving towards Syria, and all this was as a result of a very serious drought that lasted a long period of time, and it might still be going on as far as I know. So the effects of climate do play a part in serious conflicting areas of the globe. Now, my thinking is, all right, maybe you don't accept climate change, but isn't it a good idea maybe to create within the infrastructure itself pipelines, that may carry water from areas that are fertily rich, areas that are getting a lot of rainfall, to areas that can possibly suffer from drought? What's wrong with doing that? It's going to benefit the country in any case, and politically it looks like a win-win situation.
Well, even if you deny climate change, and by the way, there's a lot of people in Paris right now, 150 leaders from all over the world, who are saying there is climate change. But even if you deny it, what if you're a party of business, couldn't you recognize that behaving in a clean manner is a business opportunity? Isn't that what we're about?
Exxon, it actually was Mobil, 3 decades ago, clearly understood the negative effects on burning fossil fuels on the environment. They recognized that 30 years ago and sat on it, because it wasn't a good business model for them. It didn't help them sell their products to identify their knowledge that oil has a negative effect.
Well, for a
burning
long
of fossil
time,
fuels has a negative effect
for
on the
a
environment.
long time, the deniers would say, those people who oppose solar energy would say, well, solar is too expensive. But then the challenge that I always went after these people is to say, well, what are your assumptions? Are you, is it just the price at the gas pump compared to what it costs to install it right now? Or are you factoring in, the health effects, the environment effect, and all the other things that we don't talk about, like pollution of soil, air, and, cancer? Are those factored into those numbers or not?
Long-term thinking.
Yeah.
Really? David, what do you think?
Well, I think we're in a good position right now with Bernie, because if you look back to this time in 2007, prior to the 2008 campaign, at this point Hillary Clinton had just about the same lead over Barack Obama as she does over Bernie Sanders now. So I think we're in a good position to continue to make progress in getting him elected. But again, back to Connecticut, it's important that the question about we had a question from the audience about why do I have to register with the Democratic Party? Well, in order to vote in the Democratic primary in Connecticut, you have to register with the Democratic Party. If you're a member of another party, and that could be Republican Party, could be Independent Party, could be Green Party, could be Working Families Party, you need to re-register as a Democrat in order to vote in the primary prior to, I think it's January.
January 26th.
Thank you.
January 22nd. Was once,
well, at any rate,
26th is for
ASAP.
Yeah.
If you're unaffiliated, if you're not affiliated, you have a little bit more time in order to do that, in order to reaffiliate. But if you want to get involved, if you don't want to be voting in a primary between a group of numbskulls like the Republican Party is shaping up as, you're going to have to make the move now and reaffiliate as a Democrat, and so you can speak to a campaign and to a choice that really will make a difference.
Do it now, but
do it as a Christmas present to yourself.
You don't want to wait to January 22nd. You don't want to do that. You want to do it now, or as soon after January 1st as you can.
Yep.
What's he saying?
He's saying wrap it up.
Wrap it up.